So that's the question. Who is our real enemy? Who is running the world? The Bible's clear that it's not anybody made of flesh and blood. The Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. So where are these principalities and powers? And who are these principalities and powers? And if they're not organic entities, they're not made out of flesh and blood, then what are they made of? Well, that's the series that we've been working on that I want to continue talking about. Especially in this segment, I want to talk about all of these books written in the 1800s and 1900s that say exactly who the king of the world is, in their opinion. Most of these were the writings that these occult regimes in the past, like the Nazi regime, based their entire philosophy on and launched world wars based on this philosophy. And if you read their writings, they literally called this entity the king of the world that was running the world from the underworld. So if we look at all of this in context, it makes a lot more sense about Agenda 2030. Where did they get that year? Did they just pick it out of thin air? Well, the writings in the book, The King of the World, says that this entity from the underworld spoke to the lamas, the Tibetan lamas, in 1890 and said basically that the Agarthians would return to the surface of the earth in 2029. So what do you guys think? Do you think this has anything to do with the UFO disclosure that we're starting to see manifest right now? Do you think this has anything to do with them saying that it's going to be a whole new world in 2030? And that they need to have us all mind controlled and chipped by the time these Agarthians surface? Who really knows, right? But can we talk about it? Let's just talk about it. There's no doubt that there's some serious high strangeness going on. Both the Holy Bible and the Book of Enoch says that these fallen watchers, these fallen entities, these fallen angels are bound under the earth until that great day of the return of the Lord, the judgment. Yet there seems to be some sort of program where their underworld is controlling our surface world through a series of avatars and technologies, a literal matrix of technologies that are overlaid on top of us. Everything from droning and mind control programs to DARPA's Avatar program to the ancient pagan texts that say they used parasitic entities of some type to incarnate, starting with insects like dung beetles in Egypt. The scarab was worshipped because they said one of these gods was in it. And we've already talked about that quite a bit earlier in this series, about everything from spiritual parasites to literal synthetic parasites. So I was asking the Lord, how do I know? How do I know what's from you and what is the synthetic overlay, this matrix of control mechanisms? And he brought to my remembrance Leviticus 11, where he had already told us which creatures were genetically corrupt, which ones were genetic hybrids that Enoch had talked about, and which ones were of him. We tend to overlook those books like we overlook the books of the genealogies, so-and-so begot so-and-so begot so-and-so, where he told us exactly which bloodlines came from who and all of that. It's some dry reading. But when I asked him to more clearly define the matrix for me, this is what he showed me, and he began teaching me again with new eyes. When he says that one animal is clean or one plant is clean and one is unclean, he's not talking about something that's dirty or, it's like spiritually taboo. If you look up those words in your concordance, and it's usually about 3 words, I think, 3 or 4 words that they use for it, but they all mean the same thing, like H2930, Talme, and it means literally contaminated or polluted. Like the Bible talks about, the seed was polluted. We are genetically contaminated. He's talking about like Monsanto nowadays making GMO everything. They're going to take a gene from a salmon and they're going to put it in the plant kingdom because they want the crops to be more cold resistant. And then they're going to take something from the bacterial realm and put part of that DNA into the plant kingdom because they want it to be Roundup ready, right? They don't want poisons to be able to kill the soybeans. So that's what the Lord was saying has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And Monsanto and these other corporations and mad scientists and big pharma, they are just the current iteration of this ongoing genetic engineering program. But you can go to Leviticus 11 and you can read which ones. The word clean means that this was genetically clean. And the word unclean means that it was corrupt. And that's why we use the same word, corrupt, for so many different forms of corruption. You can corrupt a computer file, you can corrupt DNA, and then we have corruption. All of the hell on earth has come from this corruption. When we see political corruption, it's because these people are genetically inclined for corruption. The Bible literally says it in John 8. When he lies, he speaks his native language, because he is a liar and the father of lies. And when we see all of this sexual perversion that people are doing to each other and the unspeakable things that these people want to do to children, and we're like, that's so disgusting. Who thinks like that? Who could do that? Well, thank God that we don't have those desires, because that comes from this corruption, the children of the devil. It says you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out his desires. So thank God that we don't have those desires. All of the corruption in the ruling class is because they are corrupt, literally, genetically. And the genetic contamination does not just apply to the wheat and the tares, as in humans. The book of Leviticus talks about all of the clean and unclean animals and insects and birds and fish and, all of it. So the GMO is everywhere. And even we know nowadays that we don't want to eat GMO food. We don't want all of Monsanto's Frankenstein creations. We want good, healthy food. I mean, we can't hardly get our hands on it anymore. But, God was warning us about this all the way back. That's what you can't eat pork. That's unclean. That creature is unclean and it will make you sick. And people are, it's just a religious ritual. God doesn't want us to eat bacon. What's that all about? No, he's saying that it'll make you sick, just like we know not to eat GMO. And when the Bible talks about them genetically engineering even insects, it talks in Leviticus about all different kinds of insects they had genetically engineered. We see the same thing today with these megalomaniacs like Bill Gates, who release these genetically modified mosquitoes to inject everybody, and then they step in with the vaccines. They're like, mosquitoes are spreading illness. Yeah, because they're an organism that you engineered with a frickin' needle on its head. It's giving shots. It's a blood sucker. So yeah, these things are in the world with us, and they're spreading all sorts of disease and bacteria and nanotechnology and all kinds of stuff between us. But God didn't make these. And just like we see now when we did the Magnet Gate video with these GMO injections, the messenger RNA injections, that it was also in the meat. The magnets were sticking to different types of meat in our food supply. So the same exact thing that God was warning us about back in Leviticus is going on today. Our food supply is contaminated. But this was the one that I thought was interesting in light of all the nanoswarms that we've been talking about in the hive mind. That there's entire sections where he says these swarming creatures are not of him. That in ancient times they created these hive mind creatures that God says are abominations, like the abominable snowman, genetically engineered creatures that are abominations, and they are corrupt, they are unclean. And like the Lord of the Flies, that's a common one that everybody knows, that the word Beelzebub, the devil basically literally translates Lord of the Flies, and these are swarming creatures. And that was one of the things that I was asking God, there's so many creatures in the world that don't seem to serve any good purpose. You know, mosquitoes. We have deer flies here that just blood suck the animals, and horse flies, and they're just mean. I mean, they'll fly super fast from like 400 yards away if you walk outside or you're mowing or something, and just dive bomb you. They're just vicious creatures, which was one of the things that we talked about in this video that I put up over a year ago. COVID, smart viruses, 5G, nanoneural implants, optogenetics, and AI singularity. In there, we talked about them programming, literally genetically engineering people to attack. Like we see now, people are so hateful. And it's not just because people are stressed out and under pressure. I mean, of course, all of those factors play in. But they've genetically engineered people to be angry and aggressive. So we showed in there how they had done the experiments on mice and taken a gene from algae, luminescent algae, and put it in the mouse. So you can see here, this is laser off. He's just going around normal, and then as soon as the impulse hits him, it's optogenetics, it's controlled, it can be wirelessly, even though he has a wire on his head in the experiment. I showed you guys the Rockefeller University where they said they can flip the switch in the brain of these same mice wirelessly. For those who haven't seen that, here it is, right from the official Rockefeller University. You can't make this stuff up. You don't need to, right? Flipping a switch inside the head with new technology, scientists are able to exert wireless control over brain cells of mice with just the push of a button. They even say, ready your tinfoil hats. Mind control is not as far-fetched an idea as it may seem. Really. A sophisticated technique to wirelessly alter neurons in animals' brains, blah, blah, blah. But he's like totally normal and happy, and then they hit it, and he just gets totally aggressive and starts attacking whatever is in front of him. So they've literally wired us for conflict. Not only are they socially engineering us for conflict, but they have wired us for conflict and aggression. And you can see it. People aren't going to admit it because it's sort of gradual in the news, but just click on Yahoo News and it's like, oh, so-and-so killed his wife and all of his children. So-and-so ran over so-and-so. So-and-so stabbed so-and-so. Everybody's shooting everybody, and, you know, everybody's going to the mall and shooting. When I was coming up, no, you didn't ever have to. You could go to the mall. All the kids could go and hang out at the mall. You could go to school. People didn't come in and murder everybody at school. These things didn't exist because this is all part of their genetic engineering, not just social engineering, but genetic engineering program. When we talk about them flipping the switch, you know, whether it's 5G, 6G, whatever type of frequency technology it is, that they're going to flip the switch on this zombie apocalypse, this is one of the factors. These people will be programmed to attack, literally programmed to attack whoever's standing right in front of them. This is a medical and scientific reality. So it's really not too much of a mystery why a computer programmer like Bill Gates would be buying up all of the farmland. I mean, obviously there's the insider trading, or it's like well beyond insider trading, when leading up to an orchestrated collapse of the supply chains, leading up to an orchestrated famine, the years leading up to that, this guy goes around buying up all of the farmland. So besides the whole criminality of something well beyond insider trading, we can see this emerging market for quote-unquote edible vaccines, right? Making edible vaccines in plants. Some scientists believe that vaccines could be produced in edible plants, such as bananas or potatoes, which would then provide the delivery vehicles. You know, they mock and make fun of like General Flynn saying, hey, they're going to try and put these vaccines in your salad dressing or whatever, when they themselves, right here, UC San Diego, Carnegie Mellon University, and a team of scientists from these universities say that the key to these edible vaccines is, well, Bill Gates buying up all the farmland. So, and, you know, I probably won't get to it in this particular video because it's like a 2-hour segment on its own, but I want to talk about Monsanto and what they've been doing with their GMO stuff. It's not just for, you know, being more productive or whatever. They have been putting this stuff in our crops for a long time. You guys remember contraceptive corn that they wanted the people over in the third world to grow? And we think, oh, that could never happen here. And yet, what do we see? All of the studies show that not only were sperm counts per milliliter of semen down by more than 50% since 1973, but the total sperm counts were down by almost 60%. So we've seen they've been sterilizing us with these GMO crops for a long time. This has been going on a long time. This is also from the vaccine schedule that they have been, these COVID injections are not the first ones. They have had the messenger RNA technology from the 1950s. Like I said, I hope to get into some of that in this video, but if not, it'll be the very next video in this series. So yeah, in my humble opinion, that's why this computer programmer just bought all of this farmland, is because they are moving forward into the new world order, where they will be genetically engineering people through the food supply. Because they can't trick everybody into buying Monsanto seed right now. It's illegal. Our food supply is illegal. Our GMO stuff is illegal in a lot of countries. But now they are externalizing the hierarchy, right? They're like, no, this is a good thing. We're going to put all of this in the food supply, and it's for your own good. They're vaccines. They're going to make you healthy. And so as I was reading this, and the Holy Spirit began to speak to me, you know, that the plant life now that we call weeds, those aren't of God. Those were previous Monsanto type experiments done in ancient times. Oh, they're going to make them grow faster. They're not going to wait for something to come to fruition. They're going to improve it. They're going to make these plants grow tall and fast suddenly. And now they have taken over the earth and smothered out God's creation. And he explains it very succinctly that he did not create those. An enemy has done this. Matthew 13:28. The owner's servants came to him and said, Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from? And he replied, an enemy has done this. And of course that verse does indeed apply, to humans about the harvest of souls at the end of the age. But the Holy Spirit was saying that it's in every kingdom. It's in the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom and in the celestial kingdom that they have genetically tampered with and corrupted many things. And those are the unclean things of the world. That's the matrix, the synthetic, the genetically engineered, all of this stuff that's overlaid on top of us that is a battle every day. For preppers, everybody's preparing for the famine and stuff. If you think you can just stick a seed in the ground and you're going to grow your own food, you need to get started. You got to get practicing. I've been gardening now for years, and I still lose plants, and it's one battle after another. You're fighting the weeds back constantly, then you're fighting the pestilence, all of these insects. I mean, it's a battle. It's a battle to bring forth food. God said all the way back in the beginning, that original sin, that original genetic contamination, and when they disobeyed him, and then everything went to crap after that, he says, now cursed is the ground because of you, and through painful toil, now you will eat of it all the days of your life. But anyway, the swarms, the nanoswarms that we've been talking about, that apparently they had created swarming entities, the way they're trying to create the hive mind in us. Again, back to Leviticus 11, he talks about swarms constantly. You shall not make yourselves detestable with any swarming thing that swarms, and you shall not defile yourselves with them and become unclean through them. You shall not defile yourselves with any swarming thing that crawls on the ground. And he's not just talking about the Lord of Flies and stuff like that. He talks about things in the sea. But anything in the seas or the rivers that does not have fins or scales, of the swarming creatures in the waters and of the living creatures that are in the waters, is detestable to you. So that's weird that he made a differentiation between the swarming creatures in the waters and the living creatures in the waters. So that's what we've been talking about, this matrix that has been laid over on top of nature. They've lied to us. They told us that, everything in this world is part of nature. And that's not the case at all. There's an entire synthetic, technological, parasitic matrix that is laid on top of God's creation and has even gotten inside God's creation and corrupted creation. So that's why they love the theory of evolution, because they don't want us to differentiate that everything in this world is not of God. They just tell us there is no God. It just all evolved. Viruses are just leftover snippets of DNA that just float around in the world and then get inside you and hijack your cells and change your genetic code. When, in fact, the viruses are not of God. These are smart viruses. These are nanobots. These are machines. And that's basically what God said. He said, besides the Bible verses I just showed you, he said, that's how you can tell if it's from me. If it is poisonous, it is not from me. You have regular plants, ivy is beautiful, but then you have poison ivy. That's not a genetic trait that just evolved. That is something that they created. So the poison, if it's poisonous, it's not from God. If it's a bloodsucker, it's not from God. Whether that's the genetically engineered ticks that they use, for Lyme disease and all of this other stuff they're putting in us, or whether that's the ticks, or it's the mosquitoes, or it's something even bigger like a chupacabra or a vampire. Any of these hybrids are not of God. Anything that is a bloodsucker is not of God. Parasites are not of God. God did not create parasites. Anything that takes life instead of gives life is not of God. So these things were genetically engineered for all of these different programs that we've talked about over the last several years, and that the Bible has talked about for millennia.
Ants are a part of the most disciplined, dedicated social system on Earth. Until, that is, they become slaves to behavior-controlling parasites. Suddenly, these rogue ants no longer serve the colony. They're taking their orders from the parasite. Okay, let's back up. Now, how did this happen? It all begins when the ants in any town, USA, consume the slime of a passing snail. They divide it up and take it back to the colony. This is a blunder of epic proportions. Turns out, the slime is loaded with eggs of a body snatcher called the liver fluke, a type of flatworm. The liver fluke burrows into a part of the ant's brain, and for unknown reasons, it's almost like the fluke enslaves the ants and orders them to carry it to their next hosts. Any grazing mammal host with a nice warm liver will do, but in this case, a cow appears. The liver fluke worms can switch the ant's behavior on and off, causing the infected ants to place themselves in easy-to-eat positions at dusk when mammals are feeding. No cows in sight, ants act normal. Cows appear, ants are in essence ordered to take their positions in purple flowers and latch on. The cows ingest the vegetation, the ants, and the fluke larvae inside the ants all in one bite. Once inside the cow, the worms burrow out of the stomach and into the liver, where they develop into adults and dine on liver tissue. They lay eggs that are excreted from the liver into the bile duct and then defecated by the cows. They don't kill the cows, but the cows become weak and emaciated, devastating herds. And all because of parasitic mind control.
Did you catch that? This microscopic parasite controls the brain of an ant that normally gets around doing its thing just fine, but as soon as a mammal walks by, they all run up to get eaten because that parasite wants to get into the liver of a mammal.
And why is it important that these things penetrate the liver cells? Because that's where it's converted into DNA. And we see the same thing in what they call vaccines. According to Swedish researchers at Lund University, the messenger RNA from Pfizer's COVID, quote, vaccine can enter human liver cells and is converted into DNA. It's precisely what health experts and fact checkers said for more than a year could not occur. The messenger RNA is converted to DNA as early as 6 hours after exposure to the quote-unquote vaccine. According to the study published in the Journal of Molecular Biology, researchers found that when the mRNA vax enters the human liver cells, it triggers the cell's DNA, which is inside the nucleus, to increase production of the line 1 gene expression. So as crazy as it sounds, it does appear that these entities who have been bound in a lower frequency, not just below the earth, but also lower in frequency, that even though they're bound there, they have found a way to circumvent and use these people on the earth to create these technologies for them. So you have the D-wave quantum computer, which is delta wave, delta brain waves, very low frequency, associated with sleep and trance state. So they're using technologies from quantum computers to these AI-controlled nanoswarms to holographic technologies, as well as these parasites, and even these more tangible, shape-shifting type entities that can materialize and dematerialize. Almost apparition-like, but they can solidify. So it's like one step beyond holograms. It's like 3D printing, that through a frequency, through a program, this programmable matter it's not just a hologram, it's a tangible, materializing hologram. These things are in the world with us. And everybody knows by now, well, not everybody, the mainstream doesn't, but we've all heard about that they have seen these parasite eggs in these injections. And everybody's like, why would there be parasites in these injections? And it's because this is one of the technologies that they use. And we've talked about that earlier in this series, but I want to get into a lot more about this control matrix that is on the surface, but who the real rulers of this world are. All right, let's just keep going. We'll just pick up where we sort of left off. We were talking about the underworld, and not just the mob, not the mob underworld. Well, yeah, that's part of it. The whole crime syndicate underworld that deals with human trafficking and arms trafficking and drug trafficking, all of the black markets. There's an entire economy. This breakaway civilization has an entire economy apart from ours, although they have infiltrated ours and essentially taken over all of the corporations. And we all know that our CIA and other intelligence agencies around the world have taken over many of these black markets. So the CIA is doing the drug running now. They use black markets to pay for black ops and black budgets, even though they've essentially purged our CIA and FBI and military of all dissenters and resistance. Still, even below that, even below the externalization of our surface level governments, there are still black ops and black budgets. There are secret police, just the same way that the KGB and the Nazis had secret police. These crime syndicates, they have their own military, super soldiers in fact. They have paid mercenaries that just do contracts for them, that are assets, if you will. And then they have entire militias of their own that guard these mountains and these underground bases. And then they have the bleed over, or the transitional sort of gray area between the underworld, Agartha, and their human counterparts on the surface. So we see these strange men in black, a wide variety of men in black, both people from the intelligence agencies, sort of like the comedy movies Men in Black, but also these other creatures that we have been talking about, the Men in Black.
Bridgeport, Connecticut, 1953. Albert K. Bender, the nation's top UFO investigator, receives a threatening visit that will bring his research to an abrupt and premature halt.
And what happened was that he came home one night, went into his bedroom, and suddenly these three dark, shadowy figures materialized through his wall into his bedroom. They were wearing the hats and the overcoats. They had glowing eyes and they smelled like sulfur.
According to Bender, the three entities communicated with him through telepathy, warning him to discontinue his UFO research and stop publishing his influential magazine. Many who claim to have encountered them believe they are something other than human.
The men in black are mysterious and nefarious entities. They're shadowy, they wear black clothing. Many people believe that they're either extraterrestrials or somehow they're working for extraterrestrials to prevent humans from learning the truth about extraterrestrials on Earth.
Some people have reported they seem to not know things that are common, like, which end of a pin to use, or if they're offered something to eat or drink, they don't know how to eat or drink it.
Both the Hat Man and the Men in Black are known for wearing a hat. They both influence people telepathically. They both appear to be sometimes malevolent, and they could in fact be the same type of a being.
And of course, that's exactly what we believe it is. And that's what we've been talking about in these videos, that these strange cases of them being able to materialize from dust, from particles. And there's some interesting testimonies. If you go over back on YouTube, this is my last existing channel on YouTube, the #Jesus channel that we set up that is just for testimonies. This is just testimonies. But there are plenty of videos on there, interesting, awesome testimonies. And these are testimonies not just like, oh, I got saved and baptized when I was 12 or something. Like, these are hardcore testimonies. That's what this page is for. People coming out of Satanism, coming out of the New Age. I mean, like, really, people coming out of being strippers and coming out. Here's the LGBT editor and LGBT rights activists, like hardcore activists who were completely changed. Muslims who were hardcore into Islam, and they were completely changed. Like, just really powerful testimonies. The people, the hard cases that people say, oh, you can't reach them. Well, yeah, Jesus is reaching them. He's reaching right in there and plucking them out. But the one I wanted to point out right here are some of these demon encounters, demon possession, supernatural encounters, ghost hunters, paranormal, like those encounters. Like, here's one right here. #Jesus is real and demons are scared of him. Hat Man encounters. And this guy talks about, this thing, this shadow person, a lot of people call it sleep paralysis, that kept coming into his room and tormenting him and trying to pull him out of his body. Like, he was scared for his life. And that as soon as his dad prayed and said the name of Jesus, that thing took off like a bolt out of the room. And I've seen that exact thing. I'll show some of these actual footage from like the Travis Scott concert and when they put up the Arches of Baal and stuff like that, of these things flying around. You know what? I'll just pop those in here right now, rapid fire. So the first one will be Demon Spotted at the Travis Scott concert, Astroworld 2021. The next one will be Demons Show Up at the Unveiling of the Arch of Baal in London. And the last one will be Demon Manifest in Real Life at the Abortion Protest. And each of these are examples of this black mist, sometimes in the form of a person, like a shadow person, and sometimes just in the form of a black cloud, like on that old TV series, Lost. And I didn't take any of these videos personally, so there's no way that I can vet them. What I can tell you is that I have seen these things with my naked eye in real life, and I have also taken pictures of them. And I posted those pictures that I took in my bedroom, and you could even see the face. You could even make out the face. And I posted those on my YouTube channel years ago, over a decade ago. I'll see if, I don't know, since my computer crashed and stuff, I don't know if I can retrieve those or retrieve the video that they were in. I'll look it up and see if I can find those pictures. I may not get them in this video, but, I'll show you guys if I can dig them up. But here's the three I just mentioned.
Where is it? Oh, what the was that? What? Wait. Look at this, Bro, it has arms. Look, it has arms. Look it. You can see the arms? And then look, it just lands in the crowd and goes through like everybody.
Okay, they're coming from up here, top right. One will go down here into the crowd, and the other one will come from this side and go into the building.
See that? What is that?
Now look, that's crazy, and I know some people are going to say that the video is made up, but I'm here to tell you, it's probably not. Matthew 18:20 says this, where 2 or 3 are gathered in the name of Jesus, he is there in their midst. So Satan's the counterfeiter. If these people are gathering in the name of abortion, what do you think's manifesting in their midst? A demonic spirit. That's what you see. That spirit is manifesting in the physical because it's being given a lot of spiritual power to do so. Guys, the spirit realm is real. If your life ain't right with Jesus Christ, you can repent today, call on his name, he'll save you, even if you've had an abortion. Ain't that wonderful? All right, guys, stay strong. It's getting real out here.
And I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's computer generated. That wasn't real or whatever. Well, I've seen them with my own eyes, completely with my bare naked eye. Like I've seen them jump right, like literally jump. They were jumping, leaping through a doorway. I mean, it was crazy. My dad saw him and he doesn't even believe in the paranormal, but it freaked him out one day because the same exact building, the same exact room, he saw them go through the wall into the room. The same room that I had seen 2 years earlier, the same thing. And he didn't even believe in it. He couldn't believe his eyes, but he saw them too. But, so they are real. This stuff is real. It's not just on Ancient Aliens. It's not all just CGI. This is real. And, these things run from Jesus. And on that note, I think I'll pop this little clip in too. This is actually a dream that our sister had. It's one of those zombie dreams that so many people have reported the Lord giving them. This is Witness for Yeshua HaMashiach, is her channel, and I will put the link down below in the description box if you want to watch the whole thing. It's pretty lengthy. I think like 20-25 minutes or something. I'm just going to put a minute or two in here. But I thought it was pertinent because this was back in 2019, before COVID or any of that. And it is her testimony that the Lord gave her this prophetic dream, and she saw these black mist-like spirits jumping into people.
I believe there are certain aspects to this dream that is about to that's real, that could very well happen, but it might not. But it was a supernatural dream, so just listen, you'll see. People were becoming possessed. All kinds of people. It was awful. It was terrifying. What's worse is the dead were being possessed. And as soon as they were possessed, they would go after the living. The dead were going after the living. Awful. And another weird thing, there were living people that got possessed at the same time this was going on as well. And I noticed, and I remember looking up forward near the stage area, I saw one of those black things jump into somebody who was already like running for their lives. But I saw his body immediately started twitching and flopping his arms and his legs and his torso like he was crazy or just the weirdest body jerks and twitchings, like he couldn't control his body. It was the strangest thing. People were acting like that, okay? So if they were living and they got possessed, it was almost like two people in one body and not agreeing on how to operate the machine, the body, so to speak, how to drive the vehicle. Like it was in conflict with itself, and it was crazy. So people are killing people. And so we were running into this church for our lives. Already terrified. People were dying. I can't even tell you why. I don't know why. Okay? The dream picks up. We're on the streets. on foot. All the cars were being abandoned. People were just leaving them and going into buildings, having to seek shelter immediately. Okay, so this is my first attack with this reanimated person, like this, the body was reanimated of this woman. Lunges after me, trying to eat at me. That's whenever I said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. When I said Jesus, this thing that was inside of her body, this dead woman's body, immediately evacuated her body. And her body fell to the floor.
And that's interesting. That's not the first time that I've heard that, about people being able to cast out these, of course, we can cast out demons, we can cast out spirits, but talking about in a technological sense, about these nanoswarms and this nanotechnology, a lot of people just, immediately say, no, they're lost if it's technology instead of a, quote unquote, natural evil spirit. But also, Kimberly Green here on the screen, she has a lot of prophetic dreams and visions that pertain to what we're going through now. And you can see going back 4 or 5 years. So again, before COVID. And she saw the same thing, that these teenagers were like zombies. They were mind controlled. They were walking, going to some place, going down some stairs. And she went down into the gathering where they were sitting in rows, just like zombies in chairs. And she went right up to them and started doing the Lord's work and casting them out, casting these things out of them. And they would wake up like they came out of a trance immediately. So, I think maybe God's trying to tell us something. God has warned us repeatedly, and we just talked about in the last video about the dead church who deny the Holy Spirit, reject the Holy Spirit. Like, for example, in 2 Timothy 3:5, where the Bible warns us that those having the form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, from such turn away. So if you have fallen into a mindset already that this thing is over and sewn up, hopefully you can listen to the servants of the Lord and to the Bible and not deny the power that we have. We've still got work to do. And we also have to admit to ourselves that this nanotechnology is in all of us. We've been talking about it for years and years. Not just Morgellons disease, of course, but then the chemtrails. Remember the wine spit test or the alcohol spit test where, everybody was doing that for a while online. I can't believe this one is still on YouTube. I don't know how it slipped through the cracks, but it didn't matter who did it, young, old, it didn't matter. Everybody had this in their glands, in their saliva glands. And we'll get back to this later. I have a lot of clips to show about the glands and the lymph nodes and different things where this technology hides out, but specifically engineered to be in the saliva glands, which plays into this whole mythology, right, of zombies bite you and they infect you. And it plays into the genetic engineering from the snakes, from their venom glands, and the ancient beta tests, that resulted in these genetic hybrid humanoids like vampires that have these glands where they're programmed to bite people like a snake, and they have the fangs like a snake, and then the immortality. The legends are very much the same as the zombies. This whole thing with sexy vampires, that we have now, like with the Twilight series and the 50 gazillion other vampire shows that came around the same time to make them they're so seductive and so beautiful and all that. That is not at all what the legends say. The legends say that they were demonic looking, that they looked like trolls and monsters and had long tongues and deformities. And again, I'm not talking about Count Dracula and fictional books. I'm talking about the records that we'll talk about in the vampire segment, the real records of these demon spawn. They were genetically engineered, and the same with the zombies, that when they bit people, this synthetic biology that infected them and made them the literal living dead, that same synthetic nanotechnology would enter the person that they bit, and then they would be infected and it would be growing in them, which is what we've been talking about in the synthetic veins and the, all of this hydrogel synthetic biology. It's horrific. It ain't sexy, I'll tell you that. In fact, I'm compiling a file on sexually transmitted diseases. There's a lot more to this than we think. These nanotechnologies that I call smart viruses that are programmed to target specific, like these injections, they went right to women's ovaries, they went right to bone marrow. That's not accidental. These are smart viruses. They are programmed for a specific mission. And long before these things were spread throughout the communities, by Big Pharma giving injections, they were spread through black magic, sex magic, rituals, a lot of them. Just like certain of these genetically engineered contagions are spread through, saliva glands, other of them are specifically designed to be sexually transmitted. And going all the way back to Aleister Crowley, that they had these sodomy rituals where they were distributing this energy, this vril energy that they call it, that anally, at the base of the spine. It's called the Kundalini energy. And they saw it as this great honor to be sodomized, and they would have their orgasm and release their spirit, this creative energy, what they thought, it is their dark energy, into the person that they sodomized. And, even today, we see that the vast majority of people who are truly in the homosexual community they were molested as a kid, that they were sodomized by somebody as a child. And people want to deny that that's part of it, but it is. Today it's a little different because they have made an entire generation of mentally ill children that they have groomed and MK Ultra mind abused their entire lives, confusing them, so by the age of 10, they don't have any idea how to associate with reality and their bodies and that type of thing. So I'm not talking about, today's LGBT community, that a lot of them are just, they're rebelling, they're doing it, they're disenfranchised, they want to fit in, they want to be different, they want to be special. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the subset of real homosexual men, particularly. But the example that I'm going to give here in a second is a woman, so it's definitely both. But it's a fact. It's an absolute statistical fact that the vast majority of those homosexual men report that they were abused, sexually abused as a child. And I believe that there's a spirit possession, a spirit transfer that takes place in that. And that's a sex magic ritual that has been done, that Aleister Crowley wrote about, and that the Freemasons, obviously not the lodge down the street, we know that, but this subset in the, higher up initiates that partake in this Luciferian religion that they practice. And so the example that I wanted to give from the Freemasons, there was a gal, she used to be on YouTube. I think she was probably kicked off 5 or 6 years ago. And she was very frank, and her story was very graphic. So if you have children in the room, I would ask you to pause this and maybe watch it later, or put your headphones on, or whatever you have to do. This is graphic. I wouldn't want any children to hear this section right here. So what she recorded was that when she was a child, about 6 or 7 years old, that her parents were in on this. Her mother went out of town because she couldn't handle it. She couldn't be there for it. And her mother's brother, her uncle, was babysitting her. And she came from a German family, and her grandpa and her grandpa's brother spoke German. They spoke very little English, and they were in this German Masonic sect. And she said that she remembers them coming to pick her up, and her uncle pled with them, please, you don't have to do this. Please, please, you don't have to take her. Please don't do this. And they took her anyway, and they took her to this Masonic lodge where they performed this ritual on her. And the women at the Masonic lodge, which I guess is what, the Eastern Star, I mean, it doesn't get any more obvious than this, with the inverted pentagram as their symbol. I just can't believe that we have these open temples in literally every town in the U.S. with this symbol, with the satanic symbol, like right on the door. We're like, oh no, it doesn't mean that. Well, it meant that to this little girl. So she said she was taken in there, and the women took her back, like in this kitchen area, and they put her on a table, like a roller cart table. And they stripped her down. They began to prepare her, and they oiled her, and they lubed her, if you know what I mean, front and back. And they were telling her the whole time how, oh, you're so honored. You're the chosen one. You're so blessed that they're going to, impart to you this thing. They're going to put all of themselves, like the whole group was going to give her something corporately that would then be in her. And she was so special to have been chosen for this and all of this. So after the women, doted over her and prepared her for the men, then they rolled her out for this ritual. And the men all raped her, anally and vaginally. And she was so bruised, she said that she couldn't walk. She missed a week's school, and, the school called, and she remembers having to wear opaque tights and pants, things to cover her legs and arms, even though it was summertime. She had to cover because she was so bruised. And she said she remembers when it was her grandfather's turn to rape her, that he flipped her over and raped her anally because he couldn't look her in the face. She said that he turned his head, like he didn't want to do it. Like it wasn't an enjoyable pedophilia moment for him. He was literally imparting something to her. And, I can't vouch for what was going on in his head. I can't imagine anybody could do that to a little child. So I'm not saying he was a good guy. I'm just telling the story that she told. And she said they stood in a line and just each took their turn. And some of them, she said, really enjoyed it, she could tell, and others didn't. But then when they finished, they all got together in a circle. They started saying some sort of incantation. And this black monster, she said, appeared in the room. She watched it. She said it started like sort of like a mist, like a cloud, like a dark cloud, and it got bigger and bigger, and then it started to materialize, like get more dense and form into this monster, this hybrid ancient Egypt looking monster. So that was her report. So all the way back then, I made a mental note of that because the Lord had already started pointing out to me in all of these different genres, like I said, in the paranormal channels and stuff, I would hear, a guy's camping out in the woods. He's just staying there overnight on a trip, and across the creek on the other side, there were some people doing a ritual, and the people running the lodge where he checked in, they knew about it. He felt as if he was allowed to camp there because he was going to be a sacrifice. But at the time, he was just a regular guy, but he said he heard them doing these chants over there. And there was this black mist that manifested, and then a creature, he heard it coming across the creek, like people report hearing a Bigfoot or a dogman or something like that. So that's really when I started journaling and saving the files on these cases. Like, what is it that links these secret societies to these cryptid encounters, to these UFO encounters? Why does this all seem to be related? In fact, that brings to mind one more testimony from the #Jesus testimony page. Let's see if I can find her. Here she is, right here. From New Age, psychedelic drugs, and the occult to Jesus, my testimony. This gal right here, she talks about going to these concerts, like the Travis Scott concert, and she would see these shadow people jumping between people. They would, like if people were dancing together or rubbing on each other, they would move from one body to another. She saw them up above the crowd, and they would go in people and out of people. She said at the time, not knowing the Lord or anything, she thought that was evidence of how loving these big, drug orgies were. She could see spirits moving in and out of people, that they were sharing their spirit with one another. That's an understatement. But yeah, she saw these things going in and out of people. And that's kind of where we left off, where I kind of got sidetracked focusing on these nanoswarms, like the Stranger Things season 4, how they have the particle beast that possesses the monsters and all of that the Russians were doing experiments with in the prison camps. I was actually really shocked to see that in the new season because, we've been talking about this for quite a while. And to see them present it, that just how we've been talking about it, that not only was it this sentient mist, but that it was used like an artificial spirit, that then these, what I guess they were clones or multiples of the demogorgons, that it possessed them, it went into them and used them as avatars, as a hive mind that was being controlled, by the main guy. So I thought, well, that's, talk about predictive programming, that's, right in our wheelhouse. But that's pretty much where we left off. The last couple of videos have been largely about that. I actually got sidetracked. I didn't want to focus so much on that. But like I said, I just happened to run across those 4 or 5 clips on different paranormal shows that I felt were confirmation or anecdotal evidence for what we were talking about. And they weren't the clips that I intended on putting in. They weren't in the outline at all. But I thought it was important to share them. Plus, it's interesting. It's nice to take a break from the heavy stuff. Not that that's not heavy, like that there are real monsters. That when our parents told us monsters don't exist, they were completely wrong. They do. Or like we talked about in the Walking Trees video, the Sentient Mist and Walking Trees video, that when we went to our old gray-haired preachers, down at the Baptist church and asked them about the shape-shifting stories in the Bible, they just simply weren't equipped to answer our questions about how did, Moses or Aaron actually throw down a piece of wood, throw down a staff, and it turned into what looked like a living serpent. And then how did the black magicians in Egypt be able to mimic the same thing? Oh, God works in mysterious ways, and you can't fault them for it because we didn't have the technology. They had suppressed the technology to the point that we're the slave race. We weren't told about this technology. And now we understand, like Dr. Emoto's water molecule experiments, or like we talked about the silicon on the speaker and changing geometric forms with sound waves. We know that molecules can literally change form, change formation. We know that God's nature is set up in that way. And Jesus taught his disciples how to do it, even before Pentecost. Pentecost happened after the crucifixion, but when Jesus was still walking the earth, it said, that's why they call them disciples. That means students, that he taught them. He was a teacher. That's what rabbi means. He was a teacher. He taught them about nature, and he sent them out with that knowledge. And they healed people. Limbs were grown out, creative miracles. Think about that. But then also think about the mimic, that the black magicians in Egypt, they were like, so what? You know how to manipulate matter? So do we. Look what we can do with ours. And they made theirs shapeshift the same way that, even though this is completely unnatural, like we have here on the screen, the nanoswarms, they can make this change shape with frequencies. Completely artificial, completely controlled by AI, but, a pretty decent mimic. And this silliness that they're showing us on CNN, this ain't nothing compared to what these entities in Agartha, the lying signs and wonders that they have lined up to deceive us. And that's why we're here discussing this, so that crap doesn't work on us. Those cheap tricks won't work on us. Because we know the truth. We're not going to be in shock. We're not going to be in awe or anything. And in the end, even though they had the cheap replica, it says that Aaron's staff just swallowed up their staffs. It's like, oh yeah, you can do the same thing? Well, I will consume you. And it says God's a consuming fire. He's going to come clean this thing up. And God is equipping us right now. He's teaching us, his disciples. We're the servants of the Lord. And he's equipping us and teaching us right now. So that when these young people or these atheists come to us and they're like, oh yeah, so his stick just shape-shifted into a snake, so that we will be able to answer their questions. Because they have questions. I had questions. I'm not ashamed of the word of God. When it says in Exodus 7:10, so Moses and Aaron went into the Pharaoh and did what the Lord had commanded them. Aaron threw his staff in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called for his wise men and sorcerers, and they, along with the Egyptian magicians, did the same thing with their secret arts. So each one threw down his staff, and it became a serpent. But Aaron's staff swallowed up all of their staffs. I enjoy it. I enjoy talking about these topics. I find it fascinating. I really do. This stuff is very interesting to me and fascinating. So anyway, that's basically the point here that I want to start out with, is that all of these things, the black markets, black ops, the men in black, black magic, all of it is all one thing. And this technology, like, Arthur C. Clarke says, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So this is what I'm talking about, black magic. These people are privy to this information. They have passed it down through the secret societies. In the last couple of videos, we talked about the secret of the Brahmins and why we saw Congress launch this new session by praying to Brahma, that this is a real thing. I know it's terrifying to think that the world has been taken over by a satanic cult, but this is really happening. And these lying signs and wonders that the Bible talks about that we will see coming from the Antichrist and his kingdom, this is why we talk about this technology, because it's not magic. It's suppressed technology. They have already begun the UFO disclosure. You can see it anywhere on the news, not just the Navy releasing the footage and all of that, but now it's every celebrity is like, oh, I saw a UFO. And, they've started the disclosure, preparing people for the coming race, which is, what we would call the return of the Nephilim. But the Nazis and these Illuminati bloodlines, which are of the Aryan race, they believe the coming race. Here's the work from 1871 that was published on the Vril and this energy that they are imparting one to another to create this hive mind, create a literal genetically engineered corporate body of humans on the surface of the earth that are embodied by this energy and controlled by this Vril. I mean, this is the book that inspired Hitler's Mein Kampf, the 1871 work called The Coming Race. Like I said, this isn't like my theory or something. I'm just telling you what these people say they believe in their own words. And in my opinion, it's of the utmost importance that we understand this so we know who our enemy is. It's not one another. The human race is all one race. They are something else, the Aryan race. They've had the messenger RNA and CRISPR-Cas9 technology at least since the 1950s. And these people have taken over the world. I mean, right here on the screen, you can see the head of NASA is a Nazi, the head of the EU is a Nazi, the head of NATO is a Nazi, the Secretary General of the United Nations was a Nazi. They haven't just taken over, the corporations like corporate fascism. They have taken over everything. This legend of the Illuminati bloodlines, it's real. And this transhumanist agenda, this genetically engineering the superhuman, the master race, is just a continuation of their Uberman project, their master race, superhuman, Aryan race project. It's no different. We went over this several videos back about the words. Uberman literally means transcendent man, which is what these AI transhumanists like Ray Kurzweil say openly. They say openly they're still working on the Uberman. They are still engineering this master race. They've been doing it in plain sight, but they speak their esoteric language, which, 50 years ago, when I was born, there were very few people. You would have to be an initiate to really understand their language, what was being spoken and shown in the symbols and the corporate logos and everything all around us. You wouldn't be able to see them. But now we're without excuse because God has raised up an army of, what do they call them, digital soldiers, an army, literal army of millions of people exposing the symbolism so that we can speak their language now. So when we see the one-eyed symbolism, the Illuminati one-eyed symbolism and the hand signals and the corporate logos and all of it, we can see now. We can see who they are. Like with Pizzagate. We can look at that logo and know exactly what they're advertising. So all things hidden are coming to light. I know it's been a slow process, but now we're really without excuse. And it's our duty and our responsibility to help others see them, because there is still a huge portion of the human population who have been brainwashed, brought up in the re-education camps that we call public education, and told that there is no God and they just evolved from pond scum, and, you know, maybe some aliens came and threw some DNA in and created them and all this. And so this transhumanist movement, these gene therapy injections and nanotechnology, it's going to give them eternal life, and their souls are going to be trapped by these monsters. They don't realize that all of these neurological nano implants and synthetic neurological circuits and, you know, the Elon Musk brain chip and everything isn't a wonderful thing. Sadly, they'll do whatever their gay sodomite priest tells them to do. You know, the prophet of the World Economic Forum, Yuval Noah Harari, who is the main advisor to Klaus Schwab in this transhumanist movement, they're open about it. It's not a secret. It's not a Nazi secret anymore. They've gone one step beyond admitting mind control. They're like, yeah, we can hack your brains. Humans are hackable, for sure. We can do total mind control. But their sodomite priest says that isn't even good enough. He literally says this is an extinction level event. We are the last generation of Homo sapiens. We are going to extinct the human race. Because organic humans have limitations, right? They're too fragile. So we're going to make synthetic humans. So that's going to be the new bodies. But we're going to be gods. So he's literally saying, openly, in front of everybody constantly, this is the goal of the World Economic Forum, that we are going to extinct humanity. We are going to create synthetic bodies, and the gods are going to dwell on the earth in these avatars. I mean, it doesn't get any clearer than that. They literally say not only are they going to make synthetic bodies, but they're going to brain hack those bodies, and the gods are going to indwell them. You know, then we will be the gods. That's what he and the World Economic Forum believe. They will be the gods.
Under the Skin is back, and look who's with me. It's Yuval Noah Harari. Hello.
Hey, good to be here again.
Isn't it wonderful that we've found a way of communicating with each other in the form of podcasts?
I think it is.
And is there some love between us now?
I think so.
I feel love. I look at you, I look at your eyes, I think you're a beautiful person.
Thank you.
It's important, isn't it?
Very.
Not going to say I'm a beautiful person?
You are.
See? He thinks I'm beautiful. He was aching to
I'm
say
not
that.
good in this situation.
Yeah, but your husband looks happy over there.
Yeah, my husband is very good in this situation.
Catch him. Patsy. You've got to think on the fly, girl.
All big changes frighten people. We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens. We will use technology to upgrade ourselves into something different. We are facing changing the most basic rules of the game of life. Life will evolve by intelligent design, and it will break out of the organic realm into the inorganic with the creation of the first inorganic life forms. There'll still be beings, entities on planet Earth, but they will be probably much more different from us. It's almost impossible to sustain human life or organic life in general. But once you make the switch from the organic to the inorganic, there is no problem sustaining artificial intelligence.
We are in the process of becoming gods. And the big question that faces us in the coming decades is what to do with our new godlike powers.
And some people might wonder why I brought up his sexuality. And if you don't know, please go back and watch The Age of Deceit, the Trans Agenda and Breeding Program series that I did, because it talks about this cult. It's not just a death cult, it's a sex cult. But now, the new iteration, you can see all of these science articles in the last couple of days talking about how men are losing their Y chromosomes. Men have never just naturally turned into women as they age, but It's a double whammy. They're trying to cover up the genetic corruption that they're creating with these injections, and also explain why people are, having sudden adult death syndrome from these heart attacks and stuff. So look at all these articles. Men lose Y chromosomes as they age. It may be harming their hearts. Even the Jerusalem Post. Y chromosome loss causes heart failure. Cardiovascular disease, a study shows. Men's loss of Y chromosomes and heart disease risk. It's all over. It's all over the mainstream news now. And of course, the truth community has been warning about this for ages. Remember the whole Alex Jones, gay frogs, the chemicals, they're turning the frogs gay in the water and all this. It's really true. They are genetically destroying the Y chromosome. These people are sick. This is a satanic death cult, a pervert death cult. This is real. It's not just sperm counts. These people are genetically engineering this androgynous robot race. They don't want all of us. Like I always say, they don't want, if you think that you're going to get, immortality and you're going to upload your consciousness and you're going to live forever, dude, they don't want you. No way. 7.5 to 8 billion of us are scheduled for the genocide, for the extinction. The synthetics that are left, what do they say, 500 million that will be their slave race? That's what you're shooting for, to be one of the 500 million that get to be their slave race, android sort of deal? That doesn't sound like heaven to me. But the point is, these things that people were warning about, being in the water supply and all of that, it's all true. Here's the New York Times. This is a 1969 article. So you'll have to go back into the archives to get a hold of this. But it's still archived, November 25th of 1969 in the New York Times. A sterility drug in food is hinted. Biologists stress the need to curb population growth. So this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is what their scientists, their biologists, the medical and pharma community are completely corrupt. I'm not talking about the lower level people who have been duped into taking these injections just to make a buck. That's the Esau thing. He sold his soul, his birthright, for a bowl of soup. I used to read that and be like, that's like a fairy tale. Nobody would do that. Well, we've just seen it. We saw millions of people for fiat currency. And rather than coming out of Babylon, coming out of the beast system, the Babylonian system, the establishment, and saying, no, I'm not going to let you genetically engineer me and destroy me and sterilize me. They're like, well, I can't lose my job, so I'm going to go along with them. The Bible says in Revelation 18, then I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. God says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So please, share this information, share this video. It doesn't matter if they mock you and make fun of you. If there's one in a million, sometimes even if they watch 5 minutes of a video, it might be enough to make something click in their mind and make them investigate more. Maybe at another channel or another group of believers that can talk to them, communicate with them on their level, wherever they're at in their journey. But we have to try. They don't realize that they're being turned into robots, that these things want to possess them. They will be the possession of demons. Think about that. But this is a new form of slavery. This is eternal slavery. And their own writings say that there are two races in this world. There's them, the Aryan race, their Illuminati bloodlines, and there's us. But they've inverted things. They've told us our whole lives we're the Gentiles and they're the royalty. But it's the exact opposite. The human race, the descendants of Adam, are the Hebrews. Hebrew means human. The Bible is for the entire human race. And they are not the human race. They come from a very specific bloodline, which they write about openly. Albert Pike, in his book, Indian Aryan Deities and Worship as Contained in the Rig Veda, he says right here, we are by nature Aryan, Indo-European, not Semitic. The indigenous peoples whom the Aryans conquered and with whom they mixed were of a race totally different. He says, the Aryans, our spiritual kin can be found in India, Persia, Sclavonia, Greece, Italy, and Germany, not Mesopotamia, not the Adam and Eve story. They claim they are a different race. They believe that. And I believe it too. Jesus said it clearly. He called them the synagogue of Satan, the church of Satan. In John 8:44, he says, you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out his desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, refusing to uphold the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, because he is a liar and the father of lies. See, that's why there's a war on truth. These bloodlines are the literal descendants of the Babylonian Empire. They are Mystery Babylon. It's not a region. I know everybody keeps saying, oh, Babylon's New York or it's America. No, it's not a region. It's a people group. The nation, that nation means a people group. It's dispersed throughout all geographical regions. Surely you can see, now that they launched Covert-19 and the New World Order, that it's in the government of every region. It's not regional. Mystery Babylon is an empire that is worldwide. And the book of Daniel explains how this one bloodline went down through all ages of world history, starting with the head of gold, the fallen angels who came straight from heaven. You had the fallen angels who set up their kingdom on every continent. That's all the pyramids and all the pagan gods. Those are the fallen angels. And their descendants, the demigods, and then it went down through Persia. And that's what we talked about in the video about the hidden Tartarian Empire, that it's Persia. It came from Iran. Well, that's obviously an oversimplification. It's not just Iran. The Persian Empire in ancient times was, Babylon. It was huge back in the time, well before the time of Alexander the Great. But Indo-European. Most of the scholars that wrote the books that these people base their theocracy on call it Indo-European. It's all about the Indo-European. And that's also where the British East India Company comes in, was this alliance, this master race, ruling class alliance, joining the one branch of the tree, which is the Indo-Aryan side, with the European Aryan side. The Indo-Iranian branch, which we know a lot of this has survived, this information about these gods and demigods has survived in the Hindu texts, the Vedas and stuff, so they cite that a lot. All of that comes from the Indo-Aryan race. And then you have the European branch, which is, where we get the Germanic and the Roman and the Slavic, which is Russia. And you can see, especially now after Covert-19, that we can clearly see the Great Reset and the New World Order. We can see that our government has been overthrown, the coup has been launched, and we have an illegitimate government in the United States. They are also still in Germany, even after World War II. The farmers in Germany has some of the most draconian measures with these forced injections. Then we have Russia with Vladimir Putin, who is a World Economic Forum, and then we have the alliances. Russia, Vladimir Putin just went to visit Iran. So they're handling this branch of the family tree. And again, I shouldn't have to say it, but I do want to be clear. I'm not talking about the people. I'm not talking about the humans in all of these countries. I'm talking about the ruling class, the master class, as Oprah says, the master race. I'm talking about the elite ruling class of all these countries. The people who have been taken captive in every single one of these countries are all in protest. We're all protesting. It doesn't matter if it's the Dutch farmers or the truckers in Canada or the people charging the palace of Sri Lanka. It's everywhere. The people, we've been enslaved. They're trying to destroy us. They're collapsing everything to bring in their new world. Even in the Ukraine, those people aren't involved in this. Like I always say, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't have a horse in this race. The people of Ukraine, this is a battle this is a theatrical performance between these governments, like the royal families throughout all of history. in biblical times, you read the book of the Kings, and it was like sons trying to overthrow their own father for the crown. And you see the history with the royal families. They were always killing each other. They're ruthless. They would try to like kill their own children to keep them from trying to take their throne. I mean, these royal families throughout all of recorded history have been like this. They fight with one another. There's no honor among thieves. Even in the mob families, there are lower level guys who are trying to hatch plots and conspiracies with other people in the mob to overthrow the Don so that they can be the Don, and that's what we saw with the Soviet Union empire and the Nazi empire, that during World War II, they were allies, and then they ended up fighting each other because Hitler's like, no, you're not going to be king of the world, I'm going to be king of the world type deal. So that's what's going on. It's 50% theater, but it's not all theater. I really believe there's a power struggle between like the alliance, which is the Biden administration. I hate to even use that name because it's clearly not anything to do with Joe Biden, who's running our country right now. But anyway, the Biden administration siding with the government of Ukraine against Russia, and was Russia siding with the Trump administration to fight them because, our enemy's enemy is our friend. So it's my personal opinion that it's 50% theater, just for the narrative, and that the other 50% is a legitimate power struggle between these families. In fact, with all of the fake Joe Biden stuff that we've seen, there are a lot of people who would disagree with me and say that it's even way further than what I'm saying, that they have already replaced all of the leaders. David Jacobs, he's a PhD who writes these books about alien abduction, and we've covered some of these cases in the past. And he says that they are already replacing, they are constantly replacing people, whether it's celebrities or world leaders, that it's not even a matter of, them being mind controlled at this point or being part of some, agreement, but that they have literally been replaced. And you guys know, we hear a steady stream of those reports from family members. It'll be like a Hollywood comedian and his own family members will say, this isn't him. He came back looking different for a reason. This is not even him. Or like Vladimir Putin, his own ex-wife said, this is not him. This is not the same man. He's been replaced. And, so that was the buzz through the early, 2010 to 2014, 15 or whatever. And we just, now it's just Vladimir Putin. The new Putin is just Vladimir Putin to us. And the same with Joe Biden. There's just a constant stream of information showing that they're using green screens and these are Hollywood productions and, nothing is as it seems. And it doesn't matter if they look completely different, if they're a completely different height, if their signature is completely different. We just kind of go on. For some reason, people just go on. They just continue on and they go with it. So that's what I'm talking about, even though I reference the Nazis and the communists a lot because they're the perfect analogy. And they were both created by this ancient race. Communism was not defeated at the quote-unquote fall of the Soviet Union. And the Nazi regime was not defeated in World War II. This thing has to be ripped up by the root so it doesn't grow back. It grows back age after age, and there's coming a time when God's going to rip it up by the root, and it will no longer be found in the earth. Right here, Matthew 3:10. The axe lies ready at the root of the trees, and every tree that does not produce good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. And that is the work of Christ. Babylon is about to fall, and the Lord's going to take it up by the root this time. He says it right there in Daniel, after he talks about this empire reigning throughout all ages of world history. Then it talks about Christ's kingdom. And one interpretation of the Holy Scriptures states that that's the first thing Jesus did after his crucifixion, that he went into the bowels of the earth and preached to the captives. And that he wasn't the only one who was resurrected at that time. Everybody, a lot of people, not everybody, but some people have an oversimplified view of what happened when he was crucified and then he was just resurrected after 3 days and he floated up into a cloud. But that's not at all what the Bible says. The Bible says that he was crucified, and then for 3 days he went into the heart of the earth and took the keys back, and that there were multiple people resurrected at that time, people from the Old Testament. Then it says when they came up out of the grave, they went into the cities and showed themselves to people, and Jesus continued. He walked the earth for another 40 days, showing himself to people and preaching and, finishing up the work. And then he ascended. I think it's interesting, just going along with that idea of him going down into the bowels of hell and basically taking the keys back. It's interesting that even now, all of these people who have the near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences where they go to hell, like on my old channel, I had several on there from Dr. Maurice Rawlings' work called To Hell and Back, that was the general consensus of all of these experiences, that even though these people had ended up in hell, that they had called out to Jesus, or Jesus had come to save them, and that he just walked up and the demons would just loose them. They just took off screaming the other direction, and God retrieved the soul, and then they had their visit and their instructions, and they were sent back. Now, although people might debate the interpretation of that, this is close to my heart because I also had, when I was 17 years old, I had an out-of-body experience where I went to hell. And I called on the name of Jesus, and yes, a door opened and light shone through, and he pulled me right out of there instantaneously. And again, I posted that on my channel well over a decade ago. In fact, back then I didn't even know how to screen capture or anything. I don't even know if they had that software. It was that long ago, like 2008 or something. So I pulled up some pictures to try to show people what I had seen as I was giving my testimony. So I had to put my camera on my desk, like a digital camera, and I was videotaping the screen of my computer with a camera, like sitting on my desk. It was, I was a novice, but I was trying to share my experience. I'll see if, again, I had backed up my computer on a hard drive. I tried to keep backups stashed around. I will see if a video that old, if I can track that down, I will post that in the next video or two, couple videos. I'll throw that up for anybody to see who hasn't seen it, because now I understand it so much more, what I was looking at. This on the screen, this is a popular Halloween costume now. It wasn't back, 30 years ago when I had my experience. So when I was explaining what I had seen in this place was just oceans and oceans of these people who were of one consciousness. Then I didn't know the term hive mind. I didn't, know any of that. But I understood that they were all of one consciousness, and they were just writhing in pain because they could feel each other's pain. And then to escape that, they would lash out at the other one, and they would feel the pain that they had inflicted. So not only were they in the pain that was being inflicted on them, but they were also feeling the pain that they were inflicting on others. So it was just a never-ending torment. It's unbelievable. It's really hard to explain. I hope I can find that video, because I was in the Holy Spirit when I gave that testimony, and I think I probably explained it as well as I can explain it. But I had said in there that it was weird because these things, they had no hair, they had no face. They were just black beings. And it was almost like their skin was covered in spandex or something. They were just black, faceless forms. And then this costume came out a couple decades later. And the first time I saw somebody wearing that, I was like, how did they know that? How did they know? Who designed that? But I think it definitely plays into what we've been talking about here, these shadow people, these shadow beings, because I say in that testimony that there were very few humans there, that it was all these synthetics, these artificial spirits type thing there, but there were sprinkled in the endless ocean of these things, like, I don't know, maybe out of when they swarmed me, I think there was, like, I could see as far back as like maybe 100 of these things, and there were maybe 3 or 4 who were wearing human faces. So that's what I would interpret, people who were possessed or whatever by these things. Anyway, It reminds me now, talking about this, about Jesus retrieving, his people out of this place, that there really were very few in there that, like David Jacobs talks about, they walk among us or whatever, that, how many of these people who are quote unquote lost, who are going to hell, aren't actually from hell? Are they, is God going to save every single one who's his? I mean, that's what the Bible says, that every single one whom the Father has given him, he will save, even if he has to leave the 99 and find the one sheep who wandered off, or like that pearl of great price that rolls under a table. You don't just go, oh, I got a whole bag of pearls, I'm just going to leave with these. No, you move the table, you move the chair, you crawl around on your hands and knees, and you get that pearl of great price back. So that's kind of what I feel like I saw in hell. So at this point in time, I'm sort of obliged to go along with that translation, that he did absolutely go down there and preach to the captives and retrieve those hundreds of people. For example, Matthew 27:52. At that moment, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth quaked and the rocks were split. The tombs broke open, and the bodies of many saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After Jesus' resurrection, when they had come out of the tombs, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. Matthew 12:40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And then the entire rest of the New Testament talks about him building his church, that it will continue to grow, that was, the infancy of his kingdom. Just like a baby grows in the womb, the body of Christ has been growing in the earth since then. And it says, like in Romans 8:11, the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. And just as God raised Christ Jesus from the dead, he will also give life to your mortal bodies through his Spirit who lives in you. And there are other verses in the Bible that seem to allude to this underworld, a literal underworld. A lot of people in the UFO community who have encountered these other races, they say that some of these genetic hybrids are saved, that there are good ones. And the Native Americans who would encounter some of the Sasquatch tribes, there were horrible cannibal ones, evil ones, but there were other ones that were very much human, and they actually lived and worked alongside the Native American tribes, and that they knew God and Christ, and that they would make these crosses out of sticks to show the people, and they would say, Father, Father, and things like that. There are all sorts of records like that. Now, that's up for you to decide what you believe. I'm not one of those elitist people, ruling class, that thinks I have to tell you what to think or believe. I'm just sharing information, and it's between you and God. We're all at a different place on our journey, and I'm learning all the time and changing. My opinions change the more I learn, as all of us should be growing and changing all the time. So I know when I bring up some of these Bible verses, there's going to be a ton of different interpretations of these historical records. But this is another one that I thought I would bring up. And it kind of seems to allude to this underworld where this satanic empire is. It's Revelation 2:13. The angel of the church in Pergamum. Jesus says, I know where you live, where the throne of Satan sits. Yet you have held fast to my name and have not denied your faith in me, even in the day when my faithful witness Antipas was killed among you, where Satan dwells. But I have a few things against you, because some of you hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to place a stumbling block before the Israelites so that they would eat food sacrificed to idols and commit sexual immorality. Thus you also have those who hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which I hate. Repent, or else I will come to you quickly, and I will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. So that's intriguing to me, that he's talking to a group of people, who are among a group of people who hold to the doctrine of Balaam. It's where Satan dwells. It's where Satan's throne is. It's basically all the same things that we've been talking about with Agartha. But then if we're talking of records outside of the Holy Scriptures, all around the world, there are records of humans who had been taken captive by this Babylonian empire and were taken down into the underworld. And then after the cataclysm, they reemerged. Ancestors of the Inca claim to come from caves east of Cusco, Peru. Another Native American tribes say that their ancient ancestors emerged from a subterranean land through a cave at the north side of the Missouri River. In Northern Ireland, they claim that there's a tunnel that leads to a land of the subterranean race who are believed to have induced Druidism in Ireland. This is again related to them establishing these different religions on the earth. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. In the Middle Ages, an ancient German myth held that certain mountains hold a portal to the inner earth. A Russian legend says that an ancient Siberian tribe traveled to a cavern city to live inside the earth. In Nordic tradition, it was known as the home of the dark elves. In Hindu mythology, the underworld or inner earth is referred to as Patala. In Cuba, some of the Cuban peoples record that their ancestors emerged in ancient times from two caves in a mountain underground. Mexican folklore tells of a cave in a mountain and that Mexico was possessed by devilish creatures who came from inside the earth. Again in Ireland, medieval knights and saints went on pilgrimages to a cave on Station Island, where they made journeys inside the earth. Brazilian Indians claim that their forefathers emerged in ancient times from an underground land, and that many of their ancestors still remain inside the earth. Of course, we all know of the most common one because of the New Age movement and because of the Nazi contact with the Tibetan monks. But in Tibet, the Buddhists believe that this underworld is known as Shambhala and Shangri-La, and that they have been in contact with the, quote, king of the world for centuries, and that their leader, the Dalai Lama, is one person, has been one person that is reincarnated over and over and over. And they go and find him again when he's a baby, because these bodies that he lives in are just avatars. That's the whole story of the Dalai Lama, right? That it's one entity from this underworld, from the king of the world, and that he is given this knowledge and that he is reincarnated. And when his avatar, his body dies, that same entity then picks another avatar, and they go and find him when he's a child and they raise him up in their traditions. And it's this same, the Dalai Lama, supposedly this same ancient spirit that lives in these different bodies, reincarnated as the Dalai Lama over and over and over. Okay, so also over in Asia, not just Russia, but China, there are several gates to Agartha, supposedly. In fact, it's very interesting talking about Manchurian candidates and mind control coming out of that area during the wars, because the ancient records say that one of these gates are right there by Manchuria, right there on the border of Mongolia. Okay, so this says, in the Altai Mountains in Central and Eastern Asia, folklore states that Mount Baluka, I don't know if I said that right, is believed to be one of many gateways to Shambhala. Like, here's a map that shows it pretty well. So this would be the gate in Mongolia, actually more on the border of China, but they say that the descendants then from Agartha, from the underworld, populated this Asiatic area, which is Russia and China, right? These are the Aryan races. Again, not what we've been told, not just all Caucasians or anything like that. The Aryan races that have emerged from these gates, from the underworld, then populated this area of Russia and China, and this area here that is colored in, this is Manchuria. So this is where all of those amazing mind control people came back from, the war. And this is what launched the whole MK Ultra programs, remember? These people came back under some sort of high-tech mind control. And the scientists in the West wanted to know what were they doing over there in Manchuria that was able to completely change these people. So here's just another quick list of some of the known entrances or claimed legendary mythological entrances One would be in Kentucky at the Mammoth Cave, which is weird because I had family that lived right there. And there was a Bigfoot sighting that made all the news when they lived there just a couple years ago. You can go here, this is 2019. I mean, this is all mainstream news. This is Newsweek. Shots fired after alleged Bigfoot encounter in Mammoth Cave. So yeah, right up till modern times, these creatures are seen coming out of the caves there. And like I mentioned before, there are several in Brazil and Argentina and Ecuador. And we've talked a lot about that. That's why the Nazis were there. It wasn't a political thing. They didn't have to get on U-boats to go to Antarctica to access this underworld that they were working with. There were entrances in Brazil, right here. Manaus, Brazil, Morano, Santiago in Ecuador, Mato Grosso in Brazil. I have no idea how to say that. Falls at the border of Brazil and Argentina. So I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but I really, really want to point out that none of this is coincidence, that everything makes sense. There aren't any mysteries once you can see reality for what it is, not the narrative they've told us. Okay, so other entrances, the Himalaya Mountains, Rama, India, the Great Pyramid of Giza, King Solomon's Mines, and we've already talked a ton in past videos about California getting its name from Kali. Was one of these entities from this underworld who ruled that entire region, and the people there were a lot of her people and offspring. And still, you know, it's the communist coast. It's a mess over there. But the Kali worship, you know, they lit up the Empire State Building with Kali and everything. So the Kali worship is rampant, not just in California. But back to Mount Shasta in particular, there's some really crazy stories around Mount Shasta that we've touched on before, but I didn't put this part in the clip. Now I'm going to play this video clip from the Missing Enigma channel. He's telling this story, but if I'm not mistaken, this is actually from the Missing 411 books. And the two things that I want to point out today that weren't in the small clip that I have used before were really the most bizarre parts of this story. One was there seems to be some sort of family experimentation going on because his grandmother had an experience. This is about like a 3.5-year-old boy that came up missing, and he was taken into this cavern system. Yeah, that reminds me. I think that's the clip that I used before was for the Horton Mine mystery. So we were just talking about missing people being taken captive by these underground civilizations. So the important part I was pointing out about this Missing 411 story was that when the child went in there, he saw all of this gear, you know, laying around at the cave entrance where they had taken other people, and there was like guns and backpacks and stuff. So this wasn't the only human that they had been interacting with, and the others, it didn't seem made it out, but this little boy did. So anyway, the bizarre parts that weren't pertinent to that story, but are here, is that his grandmother had an experience before he was abducted while she was out camping, and they had a missing time, and they woke up knocked out, and they both had a mark on the back of their neck, like someone had taken either spinal fluid or a blood sample or something. And then when this boy was abducted, he saw what he called robot grandma. So this is what we're talking about, the synthetics. Another thing he reported is that they wanted to take a stool sample. They kept pressing him to go potty so they could get his feces. And, you know, we've talked about that in the parasite video and the COVID bioweapon, this parasitic bioweapon, that for some reason over in China, they have also been wanting to take stool samples of people. And that is something that the super soldiers like Max Spears reported when they were in these programs as children. When they would gather up these children who were in these experiments, and they would take them 6 or 8 at a time into these mountains for testing, he said one of the things they always wanted them to do was to give feces. They always wanted to do a stool sample test on, you know, Max Spears and these other people in the super soldier program. So that's interesting. You can take it or leave it. You can believe it or not, but it's interesting.
This disappearance occurred in September of 2011 in the Mount Shasta area, at a place called Fowler's Campground near the McCloud River in Northern California. A basic article on the disappearance appeared in the Mount Shasta News. The missing was a 3.5-year-old boy known as John Doe because of his age and his parents' desire for anonymity. The child and his parents were camping in the area of McCloud when the young boy suddenly vanished. The father was quoted as saying, "He was here and within a second he was gone." The parents were quick to notify the authorities, and within an hour around 100 rescue personnel from many agencies came together to search as the sun was setting. It was 5 hours into the search when a sheriff's deputy with a K-9 stumbled upon the boy not far from the campground from which he went missing. The boy was hiding within a bush when the deputy heard his cries for help. The sheriff's deputy quickly scooped him up and sprinted back to camp while carrying him and reunited the child with his parents. And, at the time, this was the whole story. John Doe went missing and was found hours later in what was a massive success. John Doe was never questioned by authorities, as there was no reason to, and all media simply reported a successful rescue operation. Were it not for the young boy's grandma, we would not know many of the bizarre details of what happened to the boy during the time that he was gone. It was about 3 weeks after the disappearance when John Doe visited his grandma Kathy, whom he called Cappy. During the visit, John said to his grandma that he did not like the other Grandma Cappy, to which she responded that she didn't understand, as she was the only Grandma Cappy. The boy then detailed that when he got lost in the woods weeks ago, it was because the other Grandma Cappy appeared out of nowhere, grabbed him, and took him to a creepy place, and that the other grandma was a robot. He further described that he was taken to a cave and there were old guns, purses, and bags, covered in cobwebs and spiders and dirt. It seemed as if they had been there for a long time, and that he only realized that this was not his real grandma when he noticed the way that light sparkled on her face. Somehow or other, this gave him the inference that she was a robot. John's grandma realized that this was a strange thing to say. John went on to say that there were other robots in the cave. They looked like people, but they did not move. They seemed frozen in position and had distorted faces. John said that this other grandma seemed nice until she examined his stomach and then tried to get him to defecate onto a piece of sticky paper, which the boy could not do. The next details that John described was being walked to a bush somewhere outside, where the other fake grandma told him to hide, and that he would be safe there. And that is the same location he was eventually found by the sheriff's deputy. The boy's real grandma called his parents, thinking that they were letting him watch some strange television that was making his imagination run wild. The parents, however, confirmed that this was the same story the boy had told them when he was discovered. However, they did not know what to make of the bizarre tale, so they forbid John Doe's grandma from pressing him with questions regarding the incident. They wanted him to move on and hopefully forget what happened without such a crazy story getting out. John Doe's grandma was particularly disturbed by the story, though, because weeks before John went missing, she had been camping with a friend in the same area around McCloud, when she had an incident where she woke up face down in the dirt with a puncture wound in the back of her neck. The incident had a lasting effect on her, both physically and emotionally. Not knowing what to think of it at the time, she could not help but feel there was some connection between her incident and the disappearance of her grandson weeks later.
Okay, I want to throw in 2 more clips that I've been wanting to show you guys that kind of pertain to this, about people being replaced by these doppelgangers or synthetics, clones, whatever. And the interesting thing is that all of these cases seem to be just regular people sprinkled throughout society, like all around us. It's not just about, the elite class. Is it Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden have been, replaced? It's regular people all around us. It really does lend some sort of credibility to what David Jacobs has been writing about. So anyway, this first one is from Beyond Creepy channel. It's called Replaced: The Strange Tale of Galina Markovna. I think that's how you say it. I don't know.
In the winter of 1978, in Novosibirsk, Russia, at around 10 p.m., Mrs. Galina Markovna an art teacher at a local school, along with her husband, a military officer, had gone to the tram stop in order to accompany some guests back to their home. As they waited, the friends observed a round object hovering over some homes. The disc-like object gave off a yellowish light, and it was about the size of the moon. Stunned, the friends watched as the object then separated into two parts. The upper one seemed brighter than the lower one, and dark spoke-like protrusions jutted out from the top half of the object. The floating object, or rather whomever was piloting it, seemed to become aware of the fact that they were being watched and slowly began to approach the friends. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the friends were jolted by the appearance of an aged woman who had approached them out of the darkness. She insisted that there was another elderly woman seated on a nearby bench in urgent need of assistance. Galina's husband decided to forget about the strange object and tend to the woman. He nodded to his wife and his friends and then proceeded to follow the elderly woman off into the night. Soon the tram arrived and the guests left. Galina continued to watch the UFO for several more minutes, but the object glided behind some nearby houses and disappeared. She thought it odd that her husband had not come back, and assumed that he may have headed home without her. Though she would be in for a surprise when she arrived back at her place, she found that he wasn't there. Her daughters insisted that he hadn't returned home yet. She reasoned that maybe he was still assisting the elderly woman, and possibly the situation was much worse than they had anticipated initially. She eventually went to bed. Late in the evening, Galina received an urgent phone call that her husband was in a military hospital, suffering from a heart attack. After several days, he was finally allowed to go home. Within hours of getting back, Galina began noticing that her husband seemed different, not himself. Even the children noticed it. Where before he was friendly and full of life, now he seemed to lack emotion. His responses, his movements seemed almost mechanical. It was very off-putting. The man they loved was gone, replaced by something strange, something that frightened them. Galina became convinced that it was not her husband, but something else pretending to be him. It looked like her husband appearance-wise, but it behaved like a biological robot. In less than a week, Galina's husband passed away, apparently due to complications stemming from the recent heart attack. Over time, Galina came to believe that everything that happened to her husband was directly linked to the sighting of the UFO and the appearance of the old lady. Galina never saw the aged lady again, but had glimpsed a similar UFO a few years later. She further believed that her husband had been abducted and replaced by a robot or a clone, and that he, her real husband, was still alive somewhere, probably far, far away from Earth. This case was investigated by Russian UFO investigator Vadim Chernobov and was written about in at least 2 publications. Albert Rosales found the case interesting, noting that the story was reminiscent of middle-aged reports of fairy folk abducting humans, mainly children, and replacing them with flawed and sickly replicas. These types of cases in which people claim that their family members are taken and replaced by clones or robotic humans, not unlike what was depicted in the movie Terminator, might sound crazy, but they are out there, usually spoken about on the fringes of ufology. Personally, I do not know what to make of these types of cases. The notion that beings could take somebody and replace them with something they created, something that almost passes as human, does seem to fall in line with the work of researcher David Jacobs, who believes the visitors are already here living among us.
Well, I'm not going to be able to put the second clip in. I've looked through my link files and I cannot find it. I searched it and did keyword searches and, I pulled up these others, but I don't know. I don't know where the link is. And I went back to Paranormal Roundtable channel and he doesn't put any descriptions or anything, and he just has a couple of words in his title line, so I can't find it. There's no way I can go back and find it. That's a real bummer. But I will give you a sort of synopsis real quick. It was very, very similar to the exact same story you just heard, only it didn't involve UFOs or anything like that. It was just this lady, her brother, he was in the military. He went into a military hospital overseas. He was being shipped home and being discharged and everything, but he went to the hospital just for something routine. And then when he came home, she said, just like this lady described her husband, he moved in with his sister, and his sister said that it was not him. He started speaking in a robotic language, like Siri or Alexa, just unnatural, and that he became very violent. He attacked them, like physically attacked them. They were scared of him. And there were even times that he spoke in Chinese, and he didn't know any foreign languages. But they said it was basically what we're talking about here. He was like an avatar, that there was some Chinese man speaking through him. And he would speak in broken English and insult them and all kinds of things. And his sister wasn't the only one to witness it. Everybody who knew him, they're like, this isn't him. What happened to him in that military hospital? So they had that in common as well. Even though this was a UFO case, he came up missing and he ended up in a military hospital, right? So that's interesting. Okay, so the links that I do have, though, will be below in the description box. I also wanted to give credit where credit's due here real quick and thank Andrew Goff for these graphics. A few of these graphics that I have shown throughout this video while I was talking, I got from his seminar, his presentation that he gave. And it just so happened we were doing this series on Agartha and Underworld and stuff, and Jim Crenshaw had posted one of his seminars. So I grabbed these graphics because they're very helpful to look at when you're talking about this stuff. Also, earlier I used a graphic from a video on Tim Truth on his channel. So I will put those links below also. But please go visit those. They have great content. Jim totally cracks me up. I really enjoy, browsing through his stuff. Even if I just read his description box, he cracks me up. But Tim Truth, too. They both have good content. I'd also like to point you back to one of my own videos that has a ton of information on this topic. It's called Paradise Lost, the Underworld, Fires, Tunnels, and Ghost Cities. And that's a 3.5-hour presentation. I just uploaded it when I moved the archive over, so it says 2022, but I made it, a couple years ago or whatever. But specifically, it's got a ton of information about all of this, and none of it is duplicates of what we're talking about here. But around the 1 hour and 20 minute mark, 1 hour and 22 minute mark, something like that, there's a segment in there about the Paradise wildfires and David Wilcock that he had claimed years and years ago, years before the Paradise, California wildfires. And he had said that there was a town in California called Paradise where these hybrids had come from this underground civilization, and that it was some sort of integration project, some sort of CIA military town, and they had their own dentists and their own doctors and stuff working there, so that they wouldn't be identified, people who were in on the program. And this was an entire town of hybrids. They were, spaced out. There were regular people living in the area too, but they had colonized. They had put them in houses and things like that, and they were trying to integrate these hybrids to see if it was possible to integrate them unnoticed. So that was years before that whole town was incinerated, obviously by directed energy weapons, and a lot of people covered that, and I think there's, some footage on that in this video here on the screen, that there were clearly anomalies, sort of like 9/11, that these things, the trees and stuff weren't burned, but these homes and everything were turned to dust. Even things like porcelain toilets were turned to dust, that, a normal house fire, that just wouldn't happen. So, there's all these theories about directed energy weapons. But in this video, I was able to go back and get clips with date stamps showing that David had been talking about this town in California, Paradise, long before these Paradise wildfires and all of this happened. So I had juxtaposed all of that stuff to say that's interesting. I don't know what you guys think about David Wilcock. I've gone back and forth on my opinion, but certainly that was one time that I thought, well, that brought some validity to his, sources, his intelligence sources, as they say. So anyway, you can go over and check that out if you are interested in this information. That's another 3.5 hours all about this underworld and the tunnels and the ghost cities. And, it's pretty interesting stuff if you're interested in this stuff. So the point is, they're not planning on staying inside the hollow earth. They are open about their return. They have been preparing. I mean, they have their people on the surface terraforming the earth and spraying and blocking out the sun and, genetic engineering, all of the slave race. They're working hard. And they have said that they are the coming race. They are going to come and rule and reign on the earth again. There's going to be a showdown. God said that he gave dominion to the human race, and they say, no, we, the Aryan race, we are going to take dominion. And God says the violent take it by force. That's what the Bible says. So there's going to be a showdown. It's called the Battle of Armageddon. And in the end, everybody is going to choose. There is no option that is no choice. You are either going to serve the Lord or you are going to serve the gods of this beast system. Like in Joshua 24:15, it says, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. Cast aside the gods your fathers served beyond the Euphrates and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if it is unpleasing in your sight to serve the Lord, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Everyone's going to bow their knee to someone. And that's what this whole Black Lives Matter thing is about. You know how they speak in double entendres? They just mock us with this stuff. That's what Black Lives Matter means to them. It's just like everything we started out talking about. The black markets, black ops, it's all underworld. And they literally launched a movement to make people take a knee, to bow down and say Black Lives Matter. And it's not okay to say all lives matter. I mean, they're open about it. They're like, no, all lives do not matter. You do not matter. The black markets, the black underworld, the dark energy, that's what matters. These people, I know, a lot of these people think they were doing it to do something with race. And it is something to do with race, the Aryan race. That's the black energy. That's the black markets. That's the black ops. That's all of it. These people are being made fools of. Everybody knows the founders of Black Lives Matter, they're communists, they're Marxists. It's a farce. And this is a humiliation ritual that people are getting down on their knees and worshiping, bowing down before this beast system. But as for me and my house, we will not bow down. We won't bow down to the communists. We won't bow down to the Nazis. We won't bow down to the beast system, and we most certainly will not take a knee for the Antichrist. You'll have to kill me first, which is their plan. Revelation 13:15, and cause all who refuse to worship the beast to be killed. That's what they believe. I mean, already, you guys see the death panels. They're like, oh, you won't take the injections? Well, then you're not going to get the organ transplant you need. They're like, we will let you die. Like, they're open about it. And their followers are that brutal. They are really that calloused. Many of them are already droned. They're already literal drones. This energy is inside of them. They don't know that they're possessed. They think it's their own thoughts. But they hate us. And the whole time telling themselves that they're the loving ones. It's the most diabolical thing. It's very sad. Like I said, God's still plucking people out, and we can still cast these demons out. We're still here, so we're still working. And everybody has a different calling, a different mission, a different ministry to do. But mine in particular is to warn people about this technology. They're going to see things in the sky. They're going to see cloud formations that are deceptive. They're going to say, oh, look, it's Jesus in the cloud, you know. They are very, very diabolical. These lying signs and wonders are going to be very convincing. If somebody has never heard information like this, they're going to immediately think, I've heard dreams and visions of people saying exactly that. Oh, it's my rapture dream, and I saw, in the clouds that Jesus was made out of clouds, and he manifested from this mist in the clouds, but it was weird because then he wanted to have sex with me, or it was weird because then he was like, bow down and worship me, or, they're like, I don't understand that part. Well, this is it. It's a deception. That's not Jesus. And Jesus ain't going to come in a UFO. Like he said, he told us all about it in the Bible. We've covered this at length. We have to be prepared to withstand the lying signs and wonders. As above, so below. The things we are seeing on the surface are all coming from this Agartha underworld. The mystery of mysteries, the secret of the Brahmins.
Brahma and God known by many names, a man and a woman.
But the point I want to make right here is that all of these things are related. And these people from the underworld have been interfering in world dominance our entire lifetime. And they've always been involved in every human war. I mean, we had the Foo Fighters, UFOs, show up during World War II. And we've covered multiple times about the UFO interference in the battles of Alexander the Great, that they showed up and shot like a laser beam at the wall, and the wall of the fortified city fell, and they were able to take it. This was to take back the Persian Empire. Alexander the Great was taking control of the Persian Empire. Right up to the present day, we've talked about the UFOs hovering over the missile silos, both in the United States and in Russia. At Minot Air Force Base and Malmstrom Air Force Base in the United States, there's been over 120 military men come forward and testify that they witnessed this. These things hovered over the missile silos, and they thought they were going to start a nuclear war. They frequency hacked, wirelessly hacked the launch codes, and in the United States, the military men report that they disarmed the missiles. And so they sequentially shut down all the missiles so we couldn't launch a response. In Russia, simultaneously, they report that these UFOs hovered over and hacked their missiles and changed the coordinates. So, they were saying, we can launch these at whoever we want, and we can disarm whoever we want. This race from Agartha, they're the ones running the world. They're the top of the pyramid up here, and they are not humans. It's not humans at the top of the pyramid. The Illuminati, bloodlines, the Aryan races of humans, they're way down here. And that's why we are out here fighting so hard to unsuppress all of this suppressed technology, so that when people see these things start to come upon the earth, they will not be deceived. They will know what they're looking at. And this is what we are looking at. As above, so below. We are looking at a real, genuine underworld below the surface of the earth, and they are all one thing. They are all one tree. Part of it is the roots, and part of it is the surface avatars. So like I always say, it is really hard to believe. I get it. It is hard to believe that there are Satanists running the world. Literally, people who serve Satan. And they're not even hiding it anymore. You expect people like this, the billionaires and everybody, to be going around in a business suit and stuff like that. Not a black, high satanic priest robe. Who dresses like that? I'll tell you who dresses like that. The satanic high priests dress like that. The druid priests dress like that. The Order of the Golden Dawn dresses like that. And so many other, Wiccan type groups, actual witches. And you could write that off as a coincidence that he just has strange taste in clothes, that instead of business suits, he wears satanic high priest robes around. But we know that the rich elitists, the millionaires and billionaires, all meet out in the groves. Pick up a Wicca book or something at your local bookstore. This isn't a secret. the witch covens meet in the groves in the woods. And we know that our billionaires and ruling class and politicians and everybody dress up in these robes and go out and do these rituals in the groves in the forest, Bohemian Grove. And look at the numbers of these. This isn't just like one snapshot that Alex Jones got. I mean, they have yearbooks. Look at the numbers of people who are involved in these satanic circles. So I know it's hard to believe, but just think about it. Do you know anybody who does this, goes out to these gatherings and performs these rituals? The billionaires do. They know tons of people. Why is that? Why is that all of them, the rich elitists and politicians and stuff, know hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who dress up in these robes and go out in, the groves and covens and do this stuff? It's because they are what they are. And they've brought their rituals with them. This is Bavaria. Here's a map. This is where we get the Bohemian Groves, right? Here's Bohemia, which borders Bavaria. And we did, I forget which video it was in, where we did Grimm's fairy tales and the true stories of these witches in the woods. And they were, eating children and, doing all this stuff. Grimm's fairy tales. That all of that stuff, a lot of that stuff came from true legends of what was going on in the Black Forest in this area. So this is it. Bavaria, this is where the Illuminati was founded with Weishaupt, right, and all of that. So here's Bavaria, and then here's the woods of Bohemia. So this Bohemian Grove is just a carryover, a place for them to meet in the United States and practice Satanism. At some point, humanity is going to have to come to terms with this. We need to know our enemy. Voting in this election, in the midterm election, is not going to save us from this ancient empire. Only one thing is going to save us. Or I guess I should say person. Only one person is going to save us. If you do not yet know him, and you are not living under his protection and his peace and his provision, please don't wait. Please. Time is very, very short. Please, there's always a link down below in the description box to a prayer if you need help, but you don't need to say some ritualistic prayer. You can just call out to him and say, if you're real, Lord, if you are real, I need you to show me. And the vast majority of us here in this community, we know him. We can testify that he's real. And if you want to hear from some of us, you can go over to my #Jesus channel that I mentioned earlier in this video. And there are tons of us on there that have come out of every imaginable situation. And we can tell you all about our personal supernatural experiences. We're not talking about church or sitting in a pew. We are talking about having a supernatural experience with the living God, a holy God, not one who wants to enslave you and torture you and use you and abuse you. A God that accepts you just as you are. He's a God who loves you unconditionally, and he says, come just as you are. The prodigal son, that's the story of the prodigal son. It says that the one son stayed and did everything just right, with his dad. Oh, he was the perfect little, golden child. But the prodigal son, he was kind of an ass. And he said, give me my money, give me my inheritance now before you even die. And he took his money and his provision and everything, and he went off and he squandered it and partied, and he ended up sleeping with the swine. He lost everything. And then one day he came to his senses and he's like, what am I doing? I'm going back to my father. And when he headed home, his father met him halfway. He didn't say, oh, you did this and you did that and you did this and you're a bad person. No, it said his father ran and met him halfway and covered his filth with a robe, covered his shame. Like any loving parent, he was just so happy to have his children come home. Please, if you are out there somewhere under the sound of my voice, and you find yourself there and you're struggling with depression and you've partied and you've done everything the world told you would make you happy, and you are not happy, come home. Call out to your Savior. He will reconcile you to our Holy Father, and He will cover your shame. He loves you. And so do I. God bless you and your families.